Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again it is Sunday and time for the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week. This week's question was kind of a compendium to the question I asked a couple of weeks ago regarding what is the best or most iconic U.S. military service pistol ever adopted. Well, I opted to go with what is the most iconic or best service rifle ever adopted by the U.S. military. These segments are really becoming one of my favorite. The whole point of my channel is just to have a place for people of the gun to come and talk about firearms and history and just chit chat. Well, I know I talk about politics, I do range reports and do hands-on stuff with guns and shooting and all that. Honestly, just talking about guns with fellow firearms enthusiasts is one of the true joys of making this channel and getting to know all of my viewers and subscribers. So this segment is quickly becoming one of my favorites. But let's go ahead and dive right into this week's poll question. Although there are many rifles that have been adopted by the U.S. military since its inception, a few stand out as exceptional mechanical works of art. While not all of these have seen the same lifespans of use, they all have served in some capacity with our armed forces. Which do you think is the best, most iconic, or just your favorite? So before I dive into the answers here, I already knew this was going to be kind of a loaded question. And the reason is not everybody on my channel may have time shooting all of these rifles. Just like I talked about with the pistols, I've discovered that over time, people's acceptance of pistols like the M9 have changed, and it's more widely used and loved today than it was, say, back in the 1990s or the 1980s. Every time the U.S. military changes one of the firearms that they use, there's always resistance. There's always questions. Was it the best pick? Was it done for a price? What was the motivations or the political motivations of the people making this choice when what we had before worked just fine? And so because of that resistance, everyone hated a gun like the Beretta M9. And then we have 30 years of service and people using them, and now it's a beloved sidearm. So I know that a lot of this, and I was already expecting the M16 or the M4 to win, because that's what most of us have either shot, or if we're more familiar on the civilian side, the AR-15. Maybe some of us don't have a lot of experience on guns like the M1903 Springfield or the M14. All of these changes were always controversial at first, and I find that different generations will love different rifles just because it's what they're used to. Or if you're a collector and like certain periods of history, such as World War II, you might gravitate towards the M1 Garand versus the M16, but fully well knowing the M16 is probably the better rifle. Now, I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that our personal perspectives and biases, I think, have a lot to do with what guns we choose. But with that said, let's dive right into the results of the poll. The M1903 Springfield, an American copy of the Mauser that won World War I, 3%. The M1 Garand, or Garand, the greatest battle implement ever devised, which was a quote by George S. Patton, 34%. The M14, the M1 modernized, uncontrollable on full auto, but iconic, 6%. The M16/M4, plastic, aluminum, and lightweight, controversial at first, 53%. And something else like the Krag Jorgensen, the Scar H, HK416, M27, etc., 5%. All right, so the results of the poll really didn't surprise me too much. I was already accepting that the M16 and M4 was going to win this thing, just because it is the firearm that I think most of us that watch my channel are most familiar with. And of course, being in the modern gun community, we're all familiar with the civilian platform, the AR-15. It is so versatile, and some people even joke it's like Legos for adults, because you can put so many things on it, change so many things out, you can work on it at home. It is just a well-engineered, fantastic rifle. But the part that really surprised me was the love of the M1 Garand. Personally, I know this is going to be controversial on my channel, I never really understood the love of the M1. Now, I know that there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of nostalgia for World War II guns. And this was a really groundbreaking rifle when it first came out, but its love and the passion that people have for it, I never truly understood because of the way that it's loaded, the time it takes to load, and its capacity compared to other options. But let's break down my thoughts on each one of these rifles. The M1903 Springfield, a copy of the Mauser bolt action rifle. I was always perplexed by guns like the M1903 or even ones like the SMLE, the short magazine Lee Enfield guns that were fielded by Britain. Why would you want guns to have a short magazine? Why do you want them to have such limited capacity when the technology already existed for box-fed rifles that could hold much more ammunition? I know a lot of it had to do with the philosophy of use, that you wanted your soldiers to take time and not waste any ammunition. And at the time that these rifles came out, ideas like trench warfare were the predominant ways of fighting battles versus today where we have a much more open battlefield. So at the time, I can see the practicality of these rifles. I just feel like sometimes the strategists at the time were not forward thinking and thinking, well, if we change the way that we use our arms, we could completely dominate the battlefield. So for example, in World War I, you had machine guns going up against bolt-action rifles. We already had semi-automatic rifles to some degree that were pretty darn effective. And why they didn't try to transfer over that technology to give soldiers in the individual trenches more firepower, I'll never understand. They even had the Tommy gun in World War I. So people were able to carry around submachine guns. They already had portable machine guns at the time when the Army was still trying to field bolt-action rifles. It never made any sense to me. I've always wanted one of these for my collection because it's just an iconic rifle. Unfortunately, I've never found the right one that hasn't been sporterized, but maybe one day I will actually be able to pick up one. It's definitely an iconic gun. When you look at pictures of World War I and soldiers, it is definitely a piece of firearms history. I don't look at it as any type of groundbreaking rifle. As I mentioned, it was a copy of the Mauser action. Nothing about it was necessarily special. It was just a good rifle for the time, but it wasn't forward thinking. And that's just my opinion, and why I also think it only got 3% of the votes in this poll. Next up, the M1 Garand, or Garand, because the actual inventor of the rifle was John Garand. It's how he pronounced his name, so it really should be pronounced the Garand rifle. But as George S. Patton said, the greatest battle implement ever devised. I've never understood that quote. While the M1 was definitely probably the best rifle that was fielded when it comes to main infantry weapons during World War II, I don't feel that the US military really utilized that firearm and modified it and modernized it as quickly as they could have. When you have a gun that is only 8 rounds, it takes a while to load, and of course there was the issue when you have the clip ejecting after the last round, which gave enemy soldiers knowledge that they're out of ammunition. Now I know people will say that eventually the soldiers learned that and began to throw the clips or have empty clips on them and throw to kind of simulate that, and then when the enemies would come out from around a corner or whatever cover to shoot, you would already be loaded and ready to go. So I know that was the way that they kind of utilized that and got around that, but I've always felt that was such a slow mechanism, kind of going back to what I was talking about when it came to the M1903. It was a great rifle, and they just did not utilize all of the other technology they had at the time. Why they couldn't figure out, hey, we can use a detachable box magazine for this thing, be able to load it faster, make it more efficient, and give our soldiers in the battlefield more firepower and the ability to reload. And that also goes back to the issue with the M1903, and really going back to the Civil War and the trapdoor Springfield, is a soldier is most vulnerable when he's having to reload his firearm. So the longer it takes them to do that, the more he's out of commission and the more vulnerable he's going to be. And I always kind of felt like the M1 Garand never really gave soldiers a whole bunch of firepower. Yeah, it was a lot faster to reload, but you were still out of commission. And that was a big, long rifle. So you have to duck. You're out of the action for a good few seconds when you could be returning fire, especially if you were utilizing a gun with a box-fed magazine. But I appreciate the M1. I know its shortcomings. I definitely think it's an iconic rifle, and it's honestly another gun that I wish I had in my collection. But for me personally, I never had the nostalgia for it, never really had the great love that I know other people have for it. I know on the collector side, the prices of an original M1 Garand has also gone through the roof over the years. I had a chance to pick up one for a lot cheaper than what they go for now, and I kind of regret not doing it. Next up, the M14. I actually think the M14 is a really cool rifle. And honestly, I think if they would have implemented this design back in World War II, it would have been a game changer and changed the future of small arms forever. Now, I don't think it is the best rifle the US military has ever adopted, but they essentially modernized what I was mentioning, the M1 Garand. They finally gave it a box magazine that was a lot quicker to load with much more capacity. They gave soldiers the ability to fire in full auto. Now, having a full powered cartridge in full auto, as I mentioned, it was uncontrollable. So that feature doesn't really do much unless they were able to kind of modify and put like a bipod on it and use it as maybe like a light machine gun. But I think for the soldier, having semi-auto was fine, but that detachable box magazine, I think, was the huge game changer. They also rechambered it, of course, for 308 or 7.62 by 51, shortening the 30-06 cartridge, which I think was also something that they could have done in World War II. And I know that they were trying to compact the size of full-size cartridges back then just to make it easier for soldiers to carry. And also with the cartridge a little bit shorter, the action doesn't have to be as complicated. I personally think the M14 is a beautiful rifle. In fact, that's why you see many of the color guards and ceremonial units still carrying the M14. It's a beautiful gun, especially with the walnut furniture on it. Fantastic firing firearm. It shoots great. I've had a chance to shoot a couple. They've been a real pleasure and joy to shoot. They're definitely not the best overall because they're just simply too heavy, and when you take an M14 and put it up against an AK-47, well, the AK-47 in the modern battlefield is going to win, and that's what they discovered in Vietnam. Now let's get on to the M16 M4. This is, as I said, the one that I would have voted for. Now, I don't vote in any of these polls, and I don't comment in the comment section below because I don't want to skew the results of the top rated comments every week. So I let you guys just do all the voting and all the commenting. This is like the B-52 bomber of rifles. As I mentioned, we're going to have B-52s, well, they've been in service since the 1950s, and we're going to have them in service probably for another 40 years. And that is a testament to their design, that they are able to be constantly modified, constantly updated, and they get the job done. They're just so well engineered and so well thought out that they can be modernized as time goes on. Eugene Stoner's design does just that. Now, I think, though, that people give too much credit to Eugene Stoner when it comes to the M16. Now, wait a second before you start typing in the comment section below about how wrong I am. Eugene Stoner was an absolute genius. But I don't think he ever envisioned the AR-15 becoming what it is today. I don't think he ever could have imagined things like free float barrels and handguards with all these different attachment options. He designed it as pretty much a plastic and aluminum lightweight M14, just chambered in 5.56, a much smaller cartridge. I don't think he ever could have imagined the lasers and lights and modularity that the gun has. I think a lot of that comes from engineers and designers later who took this rifle, modernized it, created parts for it. I don't think that was necessarily part of Eugene Stoner's initial design, but it's amazing that his genius created a platform that allowed for that we had all these interchangeable parts, and the way it could be machined could be so specific that not all the parts had to be hand fit. And that was the genius of the gun. But I don't think he was necessarily as forward thinking as people think. But because of other engineers and designers, we now have the M4 and the M16, which I think is the most iconic rifle. It can do everything. It can be changed. Caliber's relatively easy. You have the modularity, as I mentioned, from long barrels and short barrels and different types of handguards. You have great iron sights, optics, you name it, it can do it all. It is such a versatile rifle. And I have a feeling while the US military is going to want to be trying to replace this in the next few years, I have a feeling the M16, M4, or some type of platform based off of that is going to be the service rifle probably until about 2050 or so. I just don't see them doing away with it. It's like the B-52 bomber. And the last one, something else like the Krag-Jorgensen, the Scar H, the HK416, the M27. The one on this list I was really wanting to put, but YouTube doesn't give me enough options, is the Krag-Jorgensen rifle. That is a really unique rifle. If you guys don't know what that is, it was the rifle before the M1903 Springfield, and it had kind of like a weird trap door where you would simply just drop the cartridges in. You didn't have to load the magazine. The action is fascinating to me. The issue with is that the rounds went in backwards, it could jam the whole action of the gun. And so there were problems in the battlefield. People that were under a lot of stress or in dark lit situations would not be able to load the rifle effectively and efficiently and have the guns jam. But it was definitely a huge step up from this trapdoor Springfield that it replaced. And I have always wanted one of these guns. I think they're really mechanically very interesting. The other guns on this list, I kind of look at as M14 or M16 variations. You know, you have the Scar H, you know, long stroke, actually, sorry, that one's short stroke piston. HK416, another short stroke piston, AR type platform. They're all kind of variations of the M16 and A4. But I wanted to put that down there in case anybody else had a rifle that they really, really wanted to put on there. And I'm glad that 5% of people voted for this. But unfortunately, I didn't get a lot of comments about what they thought was the best. So that's what I think about all that. So let's get to the top rated comments for this week. And our top rated comment comes from Joseph Boca Rosa, who said the best, AR-15, M16, M4, the most iconic, M1 Garand. So how do I vote? So there you go. So I'm not sure how he voted, but he voted one way. So once again, going back, the love of the M1 Garand, I don't personally get it, but I think it's a cool rifle. But he even agrees with me that the best is the M15. I sound like Joe Biden. The AR-15, the M16, or the M4. The next comment comes from Joe Morgan, who says, I said M16. Everyone loves to hate it, but after owning an AR-15, 99% of the gripes are angry fuds who don't like change weapons are meant to be deadly and useful, and pretty comes second. So yes, I definitely agree that the people that may not like the AR-15, I guess we sometimes refer to them as FUDs. They like their woodstock guns, and there's nothing wrong with the cosmetics of a beautiful woodstock gun. But personally, you gotta look at the modernization of the world. Technology moves forward, materials that make the world move forward, everything changes. We have things today like titanium and certain alloys of nickel that we didn't have 50, 60 years ago. And so we can do much more amazing things with lighter weight, stronger materials. And that is what I think the M4, M16 ushered in. Our next comment comes from Last Crusader, who said, I don't trust anyone that didn't pick the M1 Garand. Once again, more M1 love. I can appreciate it. All right, then we have Richard S. McHardy, who said 1903 Springfield is the most iconic and the M16 M4 is the best. I choose these two for their accuracy. Well, you can't vote for both, so I wonder which one he voted for. So, but I'm glad to see the 1903 got a little love there as well. And our last comment of the day comes from Mixed Bag Racing, who says, I voted M1 as the most iconic. It has a certain je ne sais quoi or elevated stature over the others. And I hope I pronounced that correctly. I don't speak French. But anyway, the M1 Garand. Man, everyone loves that rifle. I'm really kind of surprised there's not more companies that don't make that gun in aftermarket or clone it out. You know, if you really want an M1, you gotta try to find a surplus one. And sometimes those can be really shot out and they've been kind of sporterized as well. But they are awesome rifles. I like to own one, but I just don't get the fascination with them. But I'm glad that other people do. And that's the one thing about the gun community I absolutely love. You don't have to be into the same guns I'm in. I don't have to be into the same guns you are. But collectively, we love firearms and the history, and we preserve them for the future generations. That's what I absolutely love about this. So there you go. So that is the Texas Gun Vault question of the week regarding U.S. military service rifles. The new question should be out right now as this video is posted. So go over to my community tab on my channel, check it out. I will put a link in the description below. Go there and vote on the next poll question and comment and like other people's comments so I can get the most top rated comment of every week to add to the video. So thank you guys as always for watching. I hope you enjoy this segment. And as always, thanks for watching.